You're either on the bus or you're off the bus.
Welcome aboard. This is episode 21 of Ridin the Bus, the official Iowa Wild podcast presented by Explore Minnesota. Joey Goldstein to my left, Ben Gislason here in the co-captain's chair of our podcast for episode number 21. Our previous guest was Adam Beckman. Our current guest coming your way this week, general manager of the Iowa Wild, Mike Murray. And before we dive deeper into that, we can preface it as, if you are looking for a rundown of who are the new faces, which was our goal, what it wound up being was a rundown
of everybody,
of literally everybody that we could see in an Iowa Wild sweater this season, you've come to the right place because, no surprise, a guy that is, I have talked about before, is as diligent, as thorough as they come in Mike Murray, gives us just that, a very thorough walkthrough of the Iowa Wild roster. And I left the interview very excited about this team. Yeah. And I already was, and I know every team, every staff this year is saying, we're so excited about our team. I get that. But there's something about this group, and you could tell he's excited too when we talked to him. There's a lot to be excited about for this Wild team and a lot of reasons why they could be a really, really fun team to watch this year.
They're happy about the way the offseason went. It seems like every goal that they had going into the offseason, through free agency, through the draft, everything that they wanted to do, they checked that box. And it seems like they checked it relatively early. They're like, yep, we got what we needed. We're ready to go. And we were talking a little bit about it before we came on. Just this team is it seems like they're going to score a lot of goals. With a young defensive core, there may be a lot of opportunities, but they're going to be very exciting games to watch. And like you said, there's just the way it's kind of shaping up to be. And I referenced that Barracuda team that went to the conference finals in 2016-17. It reminds me a lot of that team where there are a lot of players on this roster who are NHL ready, or they're very, very highly touted prospects, and since that time have gone on to be full-time NHL players. It feels a lot like that, looking at what we have coming in, what the prospect pool looks like, what some of these veterans look like. These are guys who are going to see NHL time. In the future, we'll see NHL time. So, and we've got great goaltending on the back end too. So kind of top to bottom, everything rounds out really well, and it's exciting.
And the thing that Mike gets to as well, and we won't spoil it, but not only is that top end there, and he'll list out better than we can what the potential top six forwards could look like. It's nuts to think about. And that won't be how it always is. But what I'm getting to is the options that they have. And the fact that if Minnesota gets dinged up, or Iowa gets dinged up, or Minnesota and Iowa get dinged up at the same time, which happens every year, you're not going to go, where do we go? Who do we look to? They have these options now throughout. In goal, Jesper Wallstedt, Zane McIntyre, Hunter Jones, by the way, his numbers were a little bit on the wrong end down in the ECHL last year, but that's because he saw 1,000 shots a night.
Sure.
And everybody that I talked to about him said he was one of the biggest reasons they won games last year, and he was really good for them. And he's a guy that if Iowa needs to depend on him, as Mike talked about, as they did last year against Milwaukee when he played his one AHL game, he was lights out in that game in Milwaukee. So he's an option. You have Mike O'Leary coming back, who can play as a complete Swiss Army knife player anywhere you want him to play. He single-handedly beat the Grand Rapids Griffins in a pair of games last weekend, if we all remember, or last year on a weekend, which we all remember very well. It was awesome. So there's all these different pieces now that aren't even maybe the pieces you look at and go, this is why they're going to win. But there are layers behind the shiny layers that I think makes this team potentially very potent and very battle-hardened and tested and ready to deal with the ebbs and flows of an AHL season. The D-core is the big question mark, and it could go either way.
Yep.
It could go, they're young, or it could go, they're young, but boy, they're talented. We know they're talented. They're going to be, they're all draft picks. They're all Minnesota Wild draft picks, with the exception of Dakota Mermis, Brendan Miller, Landon Kosier. Those are
Johansson too. I don't think he's a draft pick.
No, he's a draft pick. These are all Minnesota Wild draft picks, and a lot of them are first, second, third rounders. So there's a ton of talent there. Now, will they be able to get up to speed quick enough? We don't know. Damon Hunt got up to speed really fast. Mm-hmm. So if you even get one or two of those guys coming in to play even a semblance of like Damon Hunt played last year, your learning curve may not be as steep. You might not get that too. So that's to me the big question mark. But to your point, like you said with that Barracuda team that you were a part of, there are tons of NHL ready players, and there are also tons of players who are likely going to be NHLers in the future. And that's the recipe for an American League championship team. Again, we're not crowning anybody here, but that's the recipe.
You look at the teams that have won, and that's fairly consistent across the board.
Without question.
Obviously, there's a lot of things that come into play, and it's how well is the group going to mesh when they get out there. That's obviously a big part of it. But you referenced when Mike kind of rattled off some names for what a top six could look like. I mean, oftentimes in hockey talk about your top six and your bottom six. We're not really talking about a top six because you start talking about six, and then you're like, well, what about this guy? You're really talking about a top nine almost, right? There's so many interchangeable parts, and there's so many names. I mean, I could rattle off to you 6 names right now, and you'd say, well, what about this person? What about this person? And at any point in time, things can be switched around and shuffled, and it's all going to be a matter of, who's gelling, who's playing well together. But I've got a feeling we're not going to see a true, like, first line, second line. We could roll out, in theory, 3 very effective first lines at any time.
And players like a Cale Kessie who come in as that enforcer type player to round out the bottom side of your line. So it seems like it's been a very purposeful makeup for this team, and I always think purposeful wins as opposed to just grabbing the best players available. They've grabbed the players they feel is going to make the best possible team, not only for the Iowa Wild, but to have the right players to come up to Minnesota if and when that time comes. But that's how the course of the NHL season goes, is you need players from the AHL, and especially with the cap crunch that's still hitting Minnesota, they really, in these next couple of years here, they really need to have players step up from the Iowa Wild to deliver for them until they can get out of this cap crunch that they're in, which I believe only has 2 years left on it.
I'm excited to see what Cale Kessie can bring. Hearing Mike talk about him a little bit, and obviously the physical side of the game, but the energy side of things, and that's someone I look at, last year's team, and Patrick Curry was someone like that who just played with, and finished his checks, played fast, played hard. That's somebody who fans are going to adore. So I'm excited to see his game, really for the first time here. I obviously he played with Colorado a bit last year. I don't know if he was with them when we played. It wasn't somebody that I really noticed.
He got traded to Colorado, I believe, to finish the year. So unfortunately missed out on a ring.
So that's unfortunate.
Hopefully he doesn't listen to this. He's like, I don't even know this guy, and he's talking about me missing out on a ring.
But hopefully, we get one this year, right? That's the
goal.
There you go.
There you go.
It's not about the. Listen, Ben, I came from a place where rings. In Boston, it's a thing, right? And the word is always, well, the last one's great, but we're looking forward to the next one. You should always be looking forward. Don't look back, right? And I think that's the
let's get out of this.
The moral of the story here.
Oh God, it's been a while. Actually, it's been a while since you brought up Boston.
It has.
I think it was like a weekly or a bi-weekly occurrence during the season and last summer. But I don't think during this summer's edition of the podcast you've brought up Boston. Minus when you were in Boston.
Yeah, I don't know
if there's been. You didn't talk about it a lot when we were there. Minus the weather stunk.
Yeah, I don't know if there's been an opening for me to do that.
What do you mean? You've kicked that door open countless times on this podcast.
We also haven't.
You guys ever been to Boston before?
We also haven't had a ton of episodes, which we apologize for. Probably less than we were hoping, but we've got some cool. We'll get to it in the back half of the podcast. I think Mike's interview is pretty long and thorough. I think we should probably just dive into that and give the people what they want.
Sounds good. Without any further ado, it's time to hear from the general manager of the Iowa Wild, Mike Murray, on a really good chat through all the new faces and a lot of the familiar ones that could be in an Iowa Wild sweater this season.
Before we get to our second period interview with our special guest, Mike Murray, I wanted to bring a quick shout out to our sponsor, Explore Minnesota. Minnesota is home to one of the most vibrant arts and culture scenes in the country, from the culturally curious Spam Museum in the south to a replica Viking ship in the north to everything in between. Make sure to also experience the nationally acclaimed Guthrie Theater, Walker Art Center, Paisley Park, and so much more. Visit exploreminnesota.com to begin your dream vacation.
I think that was your best read yet. Culturally curious. That
Felt
wasn't
good.
easy.
Yeah, no.
That was nicely done.
Unique New York. I've been working on it.
A great job there to Joey, and it's our pleasure to welcome back to the podcast now our second recurring guest, Dakota Mermis, rejoined us now, General Manager of the Iowa Wild and Director of Hockey Operations for the Minnesota Wild. Mike Murray joins us here, I believe out east right now, it looks like. Are you back on the coast right now, Mike, or have you since moved into a new spot in Minnesota?
Yeah, here in the Twin Cities, still heading back east to go visit some family a little later this month, though. So certainly looking forward to that.
Well, great to have you back with us, Mike. And we've got a lot to cover today. We do want to get to a lot of the new faces who we know you will know best. And so no reason for Joey and I to pontificate about what we think we know about these players. So we brought in the guy who will really know these players well in you. But before we get there, Mike, give us a snapshot of your offseason so far for you. I know it's been a different offseason, obviously, with the newest member of you and your wife's family coming in the spring. But what's been going on for you? I know off seasons are not as busy as in season, but they are still busy.
Yeah, I guess that was the first part we got that helped us get over the end of both our season in Iowa and with the big club in Minnesota, beginning of May. My wife and I, we had our little baby girl on May 2nd there. So that's been quite an adventure the last few months navigating that. But we're doing great here. And from the work perspective, our both seasons ended the end of April, beginning of May. They're certainly earlier than we would have liked in both places, respectively. But, as I've said before, you kind of lick your wounds for a week or two. You reflect on the season and things that need to be done. And then you quickly turn the page to starting to look ahead. And we had the draft to prepare for. We had free agency to prepare for. We had staff openings in Iowa we had to fill. You had development camp. And now all of a sudden we're on the eve of August here. And it goes by quickly. And before we know it, it'll be September and fall and hockey season and training camp. And it's really exciting to when we get to that point.
When you put it like that, it really doesn't sound like much of an off season.
No, it doesn't sound like you've had too much downtime.
No, but it's great. There's the various checkpoints of the calendar. They're all exciting in their own right. The season and through the winter, obviously, with the games and the schedule as it is. But then the off season things that we're here to do that prepare us ultimately for the season to come.
Obviously, a lot of excitement around the new staff and the bench boss that will be leading the Iowa Wild this coming season in Brett McLean, who returns to Des Moines after a stint when he was an assistant down here under Tim Armey, now taking the helm. Give me the opening chapters of what working with him has been like so far. Now, this is the easy part of working with someone, right? The off season, but when the in season's when the rubber really hits the road. But what has it been like so far? The opening months here of working with Brett and his imprint that he's trying to stamp on the Brett McLean chapter of the Iowa Wild.
Well, the best part from the organizational perspective is the familiarity with Brett. He was an assistant coach in Iowa for 3 years. He's been on our NHL staff for the last 3 years. There was really no transition period or orientation into the organization that was necessary. So it was really nice just from even before day one, before we had that press conference in Minnesota announcing Brett, he was able to seamlessly pick up where we are as an organization and begin to plan ahead and look towards the season. And on a personal level, obviously, myself being in the organization for the last 3 years, having that relationship with Brett and having that baseline to begin building and moving forward with him.
Not only Brett McLean, Mike, but the additions of Ben Simon as well as Pat Dwyer, two guys with Calder Cups in their pedigree from a coaching perspective. I know that was a part of what jumped out for those two for you guys, but you also told me it was a very deep pool of candidates that you had for the assistant coaching jobs. Why did those two, along with those Calder Cup pedigrees, jump out to you?
Yeah, it was a very, very thorough process going through with Brett and really our whole hockey operations management group going through the pool of candidates to fill those two assistant spots. And and you start with Ben Simon there. It was something that we had touched on if it was the right fit to have someone with head coaching experience. Brett has never been a head coach before. So to surround himself with somebody who's kind of been through that in the position in the AHL to be able to lean on during the season for that input is really an asset to our coaching staff and to Brett and to the organization. Ben had great success in Grand Rapids as an assistant coach under Todd Nelson. And then the last 5 seasons, I believe it was, as the head coach there, and worked with a lot of good players and a really good organization. So to be able to bring him in and really with both candidates, the familiarity of coming from teams in our division, they also know our player pool very well, very versed in our organization and our style. So again, their starting point is certainly already ahead of the curve. And then with Pat Dwyer, bringing him in from the Chicago Wolves, just really, really impressed with him through the interview process. A very, very sharp, bright hockey mind. Again, with the winning pedigree. 2 years ago, that team with the Chicago Wolves that won the Calder Cup, probably as good a team as I've seen in my time with the AHL. So knowing his role in developing players there in a winning environment, certainly look forward to having him as a part of our staff as well.
Both of these guys, obviously winning pedigrees are important, but the development of the players is a whole other element. And I think Detroit as an organization, Carolina as an organization do a really good job at getting their young players to the next level, something that Minnesota takes a lot of pride in. Was that another big piece for you guys and what you were looking for in these assistants?
Absolutely. We needed the whole staff to have a comfort level with working with younger players, with developing the prospects, to helping them reach their potential. And it's interesting. You look at the careers of those three, of Brett, Ben, and Pat. They had to grind their way to reach the highest. So all 3 of them played in the NHL. All 3 of them spent substantial time in the minor leagues. They know what it takes from a personal level in their own careers to make the most of their ability and reach their potential. And now seeing them transition and doing that as coaches in their careers. Again, we feel the fit of all of them as individuals, and now the 3 of them as a staff, again, with the rest of the support staff. We couldn't be more thrilled about the group we have now.
We have really posed this to our fans as a chat about new faces. I do want to get to just a few players that we could see here in Iowa this season. We could very likely see maybe even more of these players in Minnesota this season. I know the expectation for some of these guys is to press for Minnesota. So I got 4 guys I want to get some opinions from you on, Mike, before we get to the new faces. And the first one, it's one that I know we were all excited to get him here. We're extremely excited about what year 2 could look like for him, is Jesper Wallstedt.
Yeah, Jesper, it's important for him. I think this past season, his rookie year or his first year in North America was a really eye-opening experience for him, and on a lot of levels, on the ice, off the ice, things he needs to do in both regards. But now is just to continue to take all those lessons learned from his first year and take those to the next level and continue to grow as a goaltender. And he had an outstanding rookie year, and our expectation is that will continue to grow and develop and push for opportunity with the big club. Is a theme I'll say with everyone we touch on here, is it's really up to them. They will make those decisions for us, and when the time is right, again, that'll be determined by each individual player, and that's up to Jesper. Yeah, we have Marc-Andre Fleury and Philip Gustafson, but there's no reason that Jesper can't come and push for time now. And again, that's up to him. But again, when he's in Iowa, what we've discussed with him is the expectation should come into every game, and that I'm going to put my team in the best position to win that hockey game. And that should be his focus on a day-to-day basis, and the preparation that goes into that and getting ready for each start that will come along the way this year.
Looking at what we've got coming back, so obviously we have our goalie tandem in Iowa returning with Zane and Jesper. And one thing we saw last year was the 2 of them kind of rotating splitting games, kind of an even split.
Yeah.
Is the expectation for Jesper this year to kind of carry more of the workload, something that we've seen a lot of the other top goalie prospects in the league, like Dustin Wolf and Yaroslav Askarov take? Like, is it expect that he's going to play the lion's share of the games this year, or are we looking at maybe another split like we had last year?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, Joey, and that will be dictated a little bit by the circumstances of the season as well. What's the health of our goaltenders at the NHL level? What's the schedule look like? What's the workload look like at that time? What's the health situation of Zane and Jesper and Iowa? But yeah, that's kind of the progression of Jesper that you'd like to see. Is came in, got his feet wet here last year, and then continue to take on more of that leading role here in Iowa. But at the same time, Zane is here, and you're more than a capable goalie, and that's why we've brought him back to keep him pushing Jesper. And the goal is, or the hope is, for both of them to push each other for that ice time and push each other for the net. Yeah, there's only one net, and that's what makes goaltending such a tough position and a competitive position. But Zane's not just going to sit there and hand that off to Jesper. Jesper's going to have to earn the net and those starts.
One guy that was really rooting for Jesper Volstead last year, and Jesper was rooting for this guy, was Marco Rossi. They were fast friends. The trio, Marco, Jesper, and Simon Johansson, they were almost inseparable at times throughout the season. It was fun to watch those two bud and grow together. Marco, coming into a very pivotal third season of North American Pro Hockey now, what's been the discussion with him? What are the expectations for Marco coming into year 3?
Well, that really started in our exit meeting after the season in Iowa, and as he was part of the Black Aces group, and when that ended for the big club in the playoffs in the first round, and Marco jumping at the opportunity to stay in the Twin Cities during the summer to work out with our group there. First was the World Championships, where I think he led Austria in scoring, if I'm correct. But really a great experience there for him. And then, took some time to recover and rest, and then right back to the Twin Cities here to be working out at Trio under our guidance. And, the full commitment there on his end, which was never a question mark before, but now to be doing it here, to put himself in the best position to push for a lineup spot and a roster spot in training camp. And again, as I just mentioned, that's up to him. Yeah, we have hopes and expectations for him, but that'll be up to Marco to decide, and he'll be given every opportunity to do that once we get rolling here in September.
I ran into Marco at development camp, and he was working out at Tria, and caught up with him a little bit. And the one thing that jumped out to me right when I started talking to him, I didn't know that he was staying in the Twin Cities through the whole summer. So I thought maybe he was going to be there the front end, go back a little bit. I said, when are you going back to Austria? And he goes, oh, no, I'm not. And you could tell it was I'm excited to be here, not the team's forcing me to be here type thing. You could tell he goes, no, he was stoked about it. He goes, no, I'm staying here. And I could tell in the look in his eyes, there's hunger there and there's drive there, which we've always seen from him. But to forego going back to family, which I know he has an extremely strong relationship with his family, it's tough. But that's the commitment level that it's clear he wants to drive home this summer. And that's exciting for fans of Marco and for Minnesota Wild fans too.
Yeah, there was no, when we presented him with that idea, there was no arm twisting. He jumped at it, and he was excited to be here and be a part of the group for the summer. And you can say that for a lot of guys from the NHL group on down. You have Kalen Addison, another young player who's committed here for the summer. You got more experienced veteran guys like Spurge and Jake Middleton and Sammy Walkers and the Brock Fabers and plenty of others, not to leave out any other names that are being a part of it. But you kind of forget, like, Marco's still a young kid. Addie's still a young kid. To miss going home and being with your parents, the familiarity of home cooking, sleeping in your bed at home. It's a big commitment. Everyone kind of forgets that, these are professional athletes. Those things don't matter. But those are still sacrifices these guys are making, and that's not lost on us as an organization.
Same question for Adam Beckman. Expectations for Becks, who actually overly doubled his goal total from year 1 to year 2 in the American Hockey League last year, and dealt with a little bit of injury here and there that actually stymied those numbers. He could have been close to 30 goals had he not missed almost a month there towards the end of the season. Where's Adam Beckman at? What are the thoughts for him coming into, much like Marco, a very pivotal third season of North American pro hockey?
Yeah, you get sometimes with young players, I don't want to say an impatience with reaching the end goal of being a full-time NHL player, but what I stressed to Becky was we couldn't be more happy with his development. His rookie year, he came in, he had a great NHL training camp, and I think that maybe pushed the expectation a little unfairly on him of, why isn't he in the NHL after that training camp he had a couple of years ago now. But he came to Iowa his rookie year. He really figured out what it takes to play at the professional level, playing against men, being committed to playing a more 200-foot game, what it takes to be successful to produce at the AHL level. This past year, he really took it to another level where he did produce that production that he couldn't quite find consistently his rookie year. He turned into a top 6 forward for us last year and produced at a great rate in the AHL and got more legitimate recall time to the NHL and got those experiences. And now moving into year 3 for him, it's to now produce at the NHL level, take those experiences. He played well in spurts to do it more consistently for longer periods of time and ultimately produce at the NHL level. And if he's not there when he's back in Iowa, to continue to push the envelope to become an elite player, not just for us in Iowa, but throughout the league and the AHL and be a go-to guy for us. So again, his development track is exactly what you would project and expect of a young player. And we look forward to the next step he's going to take here in September.
Final 2 familiar faces I want to get some thoughts on, and 2 guys that for different reasons surprised, that being Damon Hunt and Sammy Walker. Sammy Walker not drafted by the Minnesota Wild, Damon Hunt drafted by the Minnesota Wild, but I think I'm probably pretty confident in saying both came in and did more in year 1 than maybe the expectations were. I think Sammy even told me he did more than he expected to do in his first season. On this podcast in his first season. And all of a sudden, those are 2 guys that are, Sammy's played NHL games. Damon Hunt was a Black Ace call-up. So these are guys knocking on the door too.
Yeah, talk about earning your opportunity. When we were fortunate enough to sign Sammy in mid-August there, whenever it was when he officially became a free agent there after not signing with Tampa, you kind of slot guys in where you think they'll fit in the lineup. And from day 1, when we got down to Iowa, Sammy exceeded those expectations and never really let go of those reins. He produced right off the bat. He brought an element to our team there in Iowa, and and by December, I think was his first recall there. He had forced our hand that when there was an opportunity, he was the first guy recalled then, and that wasn't any preordained discussion when we signed him in August. He determined that he earned his opportunity, and I think that speaks to what Bill Guerin has preached since he was here day 1 as GM of the Minnesota Wild is the best players are going to play, and those are the ones who are going to be given the opportunities. And in our locker room with the NHL club, with Dean Evison in the locker room, kind of written on the walls there is earned, not given. And Sammy Walker is a perfect example of that. And then with Damon, we knew the type of player he was coming from junior. His experiences with Team Canada, although cut short by injuries and a few different situations for him, unfortunately. He came into training camp. He was still recovering from, I think it was a wrist injury at the time. But again, as the season began to unfold, he just continued to progress and take steps forward. And in the role he was given last year with the coaching staff, he took that and he performed to the best of his ability. And it was really impressive just to see him continue to take positive steps and track in the right direction, and put himself into the conversation of being an NHL player. So again, he's a guy with a great offseason to come into camp healthy. Would be the hope, unlike last year, and be able to make a bigger impression in NHL training camp and preseason games than he did a year ago due to the injury and kind of playing catch up. and really pick up where he left off at the end of the season for us in Iowa, and bring that to training camp in the fall here.
Let's get to some new faces. What we've talked about, what we've labeled this podcast as. We've done enough returning talk now. And I should clarify, there are a bevy of reasons why the players we're going to talk to here, minus the AHL deal players that we'll get to, there's a bevy of reasons why we may not ever see these players in Iowa. There's two-way deals. There's players that could stay and wind up playing junior. There are players that could stay overseas. So we should put that out there beforehand.
Yeah.
We're not
just because we're talking about it doesn't mean they're going to.
Yes. We don't want any players listening to this and they said, well, I'm going to make the NHL team. And Mike Murray is saying, I'm not going to make the NHL team. That's the one thing we don't want to say here.
Yeah.
These are players we could see. And so there's your asterisk to go in front of all these players that we talk about. The players I wanted to start with, Mike, two NHL two-way deal signings this offseason, and then one that came over via trade. Vinny Lettieri, tons of Minnesota ties. Lou Nanny's his grandpa. For any soccer fans out there, Tino Lettieri, his dad, was a soccer star for the Minnesota Kicks. That's a little-known fact. And then Jake Lucchini as well comes over from Belleville in the Ottawa system. And then Maxim Kajkovic, I need to do a pronunciation check on that, but I think that might be right. He comes over in a trade from Tampa with Pat Maroon as well. So three faces that will vie for some NHL time, could get some NHL time, but we could also see them here in Iowa at some point. Walk us through what brings those three into the Minnesota Wild organization.
You're right, and it is an interesting dynamic when you talk to these guys during the summer and into free agency there when you're looking to bring them into the organization. And it's the NHL two-way, and their goal or objective is to come to NHL training camp in September with the objective to make the big club. But if not, we'll be prepared for them to be in our locker room in Iowa. But again, the first things first, come to training camp. The focus is on the Minnesota Wild and making the NHL club. And if that doesn't pan out, then we'll go from there. But again, that's the mindset going into for all these guys coming into September. But with Vinny, there are the family ties to Minnesota in the organization. But if he wasn't the player he is, we didn't bring him here just for those reasons, right? We brought him here because he's proven to be an elite player at the AHL level, who's gotten NHL time, who has produced at the NHL in that opportunity. And again, he provides us great depth as an organization, and every opportunity is there for him to come in September and make an impression and force our hand of where he should be when it's time for the regular season to get started. So, but specifically at the AHL level, speaking to him, he was a first-line player for Providence last year, a point a game or just over a point a game on a team that was the second or third best record in the league. So, he's proven that he can be that go-to guy. And you add him in with the mix of forwards we have, not alluding to any line combinations, but you got the likes of Nick Patan and Stephen Fogarty and other veteran forwards like that, along with an Adam Beckman and a Sammy Walker and others. We really feel he complements our forward group there, and really a potent bunch that if they're all there, we'll be really excited about on that end of things.
Seems could score a lot of goals.
Holy
it sounds.
Cow! If that whole group is around, my word, I'm gonna have to be ready for the light bulb to be going off on the broadcast if that crew's here. So continuing, Jake Lucchini and Maxim Kajkovic. Again, more faces that could go right into that crew we just talked about.
Yeah, and it's funny, the connections in hockey. So Jake, coming out of college, was an undrafted free agent, and Billy Guerin, well, he was still with the Pittsburgh organization with Wilkes-Barre. He worked very hard to bring Jake into the organization there. So there's the familiarity between Billy and Jake at that level. Jake has since found himself in the Ottawa organization, and really over the last couple years has exploded onto the scene with his development and becoming a producing player. He's got a quickness, speed element to his game, and has now combined that with the production that you've seen in Belleville. Got his first NHL opportunity last season with a good stint up with Ottawa. So again, he's another guy who's who's knocking on the door of being an NHL player. And you talk a lot about the organizational depth, the internal competition. So whether it's the guys who were here last year, Nick Patan, Fogarty, Becky, Walker, any of those players, you add in a Vinny Lettieri, you add in a Jake Lucchini, all of a sudden there's that internal competition of, well, if I'm not with the big club, I'm going to outperform the other guys to position myself to be the first guy recalled from Iowa. And again, we're all on the same team. We're all striving for the same goals in Iowa. But again, they're all pushing each other to be that next guy recalled, and that only pushes all of them to be better players. So again, another exciting element and versatile player that we're going to be adding to our group in Iowa potentially.
And for Kai Kovic, I'm going to feel so bad if I learn his name is not pronounced this way, but I've yet to check in on it. I got to do my due
think I'll
diligence
just go
on that
with Max
Good call.
to start here. But yeah, he's a player that we're a little more unfamiliar with, but he's gonna be a part of our prospects tournament roster in September before training camp gets going. So we're really excited to bring him into that and get to know him more as a player and as an individual on and off the ice there. That will really be his orientation into the organization. So again, we're glad he fits for that roster. We'll all get to know him as a staff and a management group, and an exciting young player still on his entry level contract, and we'll get to see where he fits into the mix there. But again, you can never have too many good players, and that's the benefit of that trade is, as you know, we brought Pat Maroon in to fill a role at the NHL level, but as part of that, we added another depth piece into the organization as well, and we're excited to see what Max will bring to the organization.
Over the last couple of years, something that the organization has worked hard to achieve is getting depth at the center position down the middle, and
Yeah.
you know, these guys are guys that can play up the middle. How important was it to continue to have that in the organization from top to bottom?
Well, it's funny. One of kind of the objectives in the offseason from my position with Iowa was really the versatility of the roster. And that's versatility in terms of position, whether that be moving across the line and playing center or the wings position. And then in terms of versatility of being able to move up and down the lineup, guys who had the skill set to be able to play in your top six, but a well-rounded enough game to play in the bottom six, if our roster was healthy and deep enough at that time. So we really feel like we've achieved that with these players. Yeah, Vinny Lettieri is a top end AHL player. Jake Lucchini is right there as well, and he can play center, he can play wing, he can play first power play, he could play further down the lineup and bring different elements with his well-rounded game. Another forward we signed to an AHL contract, Greg Morellis. He can play center. He can play wing. We're very familiar with him from his time in Manitoba. He can be hard to play against, but he's also got a skill set where he was playing top line and top power play minutes in Manitoba. So guys that, again, the flexibility to move laterally across the lineup as well as up and down was really something we were looking at in free agency, and we feel we achieved that, and we're excited to see those pieces kind of come together here.
It's a great chat on the front end. On the back end, there are prospects coming in, very highly touted ones that will make a decor that was young last year even younger this year, but it's also going to make it infinitely more talented because all three of these guys I'm going to get to have a lot of talent in Carson Lambos, Kyle Masters, and David Spacek. A young decor doesn't necessarily mean you're going to struggle. It means maybe early there'll be some lumps and you'll have to learn a few things along the way.
Yeah.
But boy, when you look at this decor top to bottom, that will still have Simon Johansson, Ryan O'Rourke, Damon Hunt, Dakota Murmis is back into the fold. You bring Brendan Miller back as an AHL signing.
Yeah.
There's a lot to be excited about in the decor, despite its youthful exuberance.
When you say 6 first or second year pros, that might not initially be a recipe for success, but with the players we're bringing in and the caliber of player, we're really excited about what they'll bring as a group. And it starts with bringing Dakota Murmis back. that was a primary target, and those were conversations that began essentially right after the season ended, talking to him and seeing where he wanted to be, and then moving those negotiations along with his agent. And we were thrilled to get that done before free agency. Is again, he was the guy that we wanted to lead this group from the on ice perspective. There's no better person you'll find than a Dakota Mermis. So to have him in the fold is a great start. And then you surround him with the 6 first or second year guys. Like you said, we got Hunt, O'Rourke, and Simon Johansson coming back. And then you add into the mix Spot Check, Masters, and Lambos. And again, like you said, Brendan Miller on that AHL contract to kind of round out that group. They all have different elements to their game, and we can go into as depth as much as you want on each of those guys. But to have that kind of be our decor, we're really excited to see that on the ice.
It's funny. I was laughing thinking about it. Dakota and his wife Sarah already have 2 wonderful young children. It looks like they're adding a few more to the household this season. It'll be Dakota and his kids in the back end there.
It's a t-shirt idea.
There you go. The marketing wheels are spinning. Mike, we're getting towards the end of it. You've been so gracious with your time. I don't want to skirt past the AHL deals because there are a few in there that really excited me. You brought up one of them already in Greg Morellis. You mentioned it. We're very familiar with him. He was always a guy that I felt had an imprint in games against the Moose, whether it was scoring big goals or contributing on the third or second line, depending on what the makeup of the Moose Jets situation was like at the time. But there are some exciting AHL players that are coming in here as well, and those are guys that Wild fans should expect to see some of, if not all of them this season. Mike O'Leary is back into the fold. I loved the Brendan Miller signing. He was a guy that was here a few years ago, partially at the beginning of last season, is going to bring a ton to the back end that needs a guy like Brendan Miller to be back there because of what we just talked about, the youth of it. So walk us through some of these AHL signings. Cale Kessie, not to mention Casey Dornbach and Louis Boudin, who we got to see a cup of coffee of last year as well.
Yeah, and in a similar, right? Yeah, those signings on the AHL contract are just as important as everybody else on the roster too, in terms of the team building. They'll provide us the depth if we thin out at any point due to injury or recall to the big club. These are the players that you rely upon to contribute and keep the ship going in the right direction, so to speak. And again, first was Mike O'Leary. Again, another guy we targeted that we wanted to bring back into the fold and got him signed before getting to free agency. Again, you talk about versatility. Primarily a center, can move to wing if needed. When we had injuries last year, he moved into the first line center role. And he kept us afloat, and that was when we were playing some of our best hockey. And I think that was really a big confidence booster from him that happened around All-Star break last year. And I think that really propelled him into a great second half of the season. I think that he realized, all right, I can do that, produce at this level. And again, we're another player we're excited about having back with us and what he'll be able to contribute to the team. We touched on Greg Morelli's there. And excited to have him on our side of these battles now. And then a player who I think will, in very short order, become a fan favorite here in Iowa is Cale Kessie, just the style of play. And that's not limited to just being whatever his reputation may be in terms of being someone who's willing to drop the gloves. But I think it's more the energy he brings, his willingness to commit to the physical side of the game of hockey. When he's on the ice, he helps tilt it in your favor. He'll finish every hit that's out there. He'll play with an energy. There won't be a shift that goes by where you don't notice him on the ice. And I think that will certainly resonate with our fan base. And as I've heard, he is quite an impact on the community and out there. Being a very visible presence. So we look forward to his contributions on and off the ice, bringing that to the organization with the mix of players we already do have that are so willing to be out there in the Des Moines area. A couple of the younger guys up front that we brought in at the end of last year, Casey Dornbach and Louis Boudin, who got their first taste of pro hockey. And that just puts them light years ahead of where they'd be otherwise coming into their first training camps in the fall here. So they know what being a pro hockey player is all about. They know what the AHL is all about, their expectations of what they needed to do all summer to prepare for that. Is an invaluable experience for them that they got at the end of the season with us, and we're excited about those two players as well. Am I missing anybody else? A couple more of the AHL contracts. Kevin Conley back in the mix as well. Performed very well in that depth role with us last year, and a player we think has more. There's more to his game than what he was in the role he was given last year, which was what we needed, and he performed and did what we asked of him to do. But excited to see what else he'll be able to contribute with us. A few more depth pieces up front. Brett Budgell, who was under contract with the Toronto Marlies and played the season with the Newfoundland Growlers of the ECHL, and a player our amateur scouts were very high on. I believe he was the captain of his junior team. Great character, great compete, and a role player we could bring in to Iowa and help solidify that bottom six when given the opportunity there. So another good depth piece up front for us as well. And really, I think the only other names we haven't touched on out of the whole forward group are Nick Sweeney. Again, back in the mix, got his first NHL recall at the end of last season, which was really exciting. So again, just talk about a versatile piece, right? Swains will do whatever you ask him to do, whenever you ask him to do it, and you're going to get the consistency of play out of him, regardless of what role he's in. And then Mikey Mill, a young player who just, as the season progressed, the latter half of the year, probably the last month to 6 weeks, I think we really got to see what type of player he can be, the element he can bring to the game with his speed and the skill set behind it. And we really look forward to the season he's going to have this year and continue to put himself in position within the organization. So I think did I cover everyone at the forward end there? Did I miss anybody?
I think the only two that I know are possibilities would be Pavel Novak and Caden Bankier. Those aren't guarantees, but possibilities as well from the prospect side. And if we're trying to cover everybody, I think that's the only ones we'd maybe miss. Yeah,
and with Pav, coming off of I say the calendar year, the last year and a half, kind of the personal experiences he's had and going through his battle with cancer there. And it was great to see him at development camp. And for us, him just being back in the mix as a hockey player, is really exciting for us as an organization. And we'll see, where the hockey end of it goes. There's no timeline for him to become an impact player at the AHL. That's going to take, he hasn't played hockey for over a year, or, competitive hockey for over a year. So again, he will determine his timeline of where he fits in the organization. But really, with him, the bottom line is just the excitement to have him back in the locker room, on the ice, part of our group, and getting to be one of the guys as a hockey player. And then with Bankier, he had an unfortunate injury pop up during off-season training, which will kind of delay his start to pro hockey a little bit here. But again, talk about having a great last year of junior hockey on a great team in Kamloops there, and a big part of that played his way on to being the Canadian World Junior team there. And when he's healthy, he'll be a great addition to our lineup in Iowa.
As comprehensive as I expected, for sure.
Yeah, and Patan and Fogarty, we touched on them earlier.
They speak for themselves. They do speak. Yes.
You know what you're going to get with those two guys, and that's why we signed those guys to 2-year contracts a year ago, for that continuity and keeping them in the organization. And when you can bring those two guys back and they're almost afterthoughts in our conversation, you're in good shape. So.
I was going to say it was a compliment to them that we didn't talk about them, because the fans know what they're getting from them, and that's excellence, period. That's what they've provided since they arrived in a Wild uniform.
Yeah. We've gone through a ton of names, right? We've gone through a lot of names. Is there, from an organization standpoint, is there someone who maybe, I don't know if under the radar is the right word, but who are you guys looking at to really have a breakthrough year this year?
It's Yeah, it's a good question, Joey, to put me on the spot, but it's really I almost look at it as a whole. We've now Billy's been just finished his fourth season as the GM of the Minnesota Wild now, and one of his objectives, while remaining competitive and continuing to push as a Stanley Cup contender at the NHL level, was simultaneously to build the prospect pool. And to build that pipeline of prospects to become NHL players. So we feel we're now 4 years into that. You're starting to see the fruition of that now. Again, 6 first or second year draft picks on the blue line. Some of the young, talented players now filtering more throughout the lineup up front and forward. So we look at that and it's like, okay, well, now which of those players are going to distinguish themselves from that group and are going to position themselves to be NHLers, either making the team out of training camp or be that first recall guy. And rather than single out, well, I think it's going to be this guy or I think it's going to be that guy. That's the best part about this is they're going to tell us who that is. And we're excited that we have depth really at all positions now. And now we just kind of wait and see what they tell us.
Last thing for me, Mike, and Joe, if you got any more, I'll happily let you get to it. But the one thing that just consistently blows me away, and coming from development camp, another year last year, another just spectacular group of young men. And we've talked about it before. What's the magic potion? How do you guys manage to find people like you find? And it's just going to continue because I've met Lambos, I've met Masters, I've met Spotcheck, I've met Novak, Bankier, all these prospects coming in. I've texted with Vinny Lettieri. He was extremely gracious and cordial. I mean, the ability that you guys have to locate and identify the right type of people, let alone the right type of players. Can you shed any light on how you go about doing that so well? Because it seems like you almost never miss. It's just incredible to me.
Yeah, and that starts again with Billy Guerin, our GM. Yeah, it's a guy in his career who was kind of the ultimate team player, right? Like he knew on top of his ability was what he could bring off the ice in the locker room in those moments where somebody needed just to step up and be that guy. So it starts with Billy, and then all that credit goes to really every spoke of our organization, whether it's Judd Brackett and the amateur scouting group. And yeah, they're not just looking for the best players, they're looking for the best players who are the right fit for the Minnesota Wild. And character is a big part of that. With Brad Bombardier and Matt Hendricks and Cody McLeod in our player development, the work they do with those guys from the day they're drafted, they're in touch with these guys, they're in touch with their families, they're in touch with their coaching staffs, and they continue to work and develop and mold those players to the point when they step into our locker room in either Minnesota and Iowa, and really continue those relationships as that development really never stops for these players. And then on the pro side with Chris Kelleher and our pro scouts is, again, they're out trying to find the best free agent players. But again, we're not just looking for the best players, we're looking for the right players for our organization. So it's really all touch points in our organization can contribute to the players we're bringing in the locker room. And yeah, it is a great group to be around. And it starts with Billy. It starts with Dean Evison, our head coach, and the coaching staff with the big club. And now with Brett and Pat and Ben and our whole support staff and the rest of our coaching staff there in Iowa, we're all trying to, achieve the same goals and objectives. And it's nice when that's pretty universal from top to bottom in the organization.
Well, I speak for everybody down here that says, thanks for treating it that way. It makes our jobs a lot easier when you just have to deal with great people as opposed to sorting out the tricky ones. Yep. And I know that goes for you, too, and the players that you deal with on your side of it.
Huge.
Our guys do such a great job of being willingness to go on the community side, willingness to put a camera in front of their face, all the things that make our lives a lot easier down here. So I had to finish with that because every single time I just think, How do they do it? Where do they? Is there some special pool that they keep finding these players from, or is there some special test that they have them take, and they're like, oh no, he didn't pass this test, so he doesn't make it. It impresses me every time. I anything else, Joey, to get to? We've covered, like you said, we covered a lot.
I feel like we covered every single person.
Monday morning here and recording this, and we just exhausted Mike. We just exhausted all of your energy here Monday morning.
No, there were two other depth pieces that I looked at again from the organization. We touched on a contract. We have Landon Cozier back in the mix on D. Again, another player we brought in after an excellent junior career. Came in the spring, unfortunately, with where we were in the standings in our playoff chase last year, and health-wise didn't have the opportunity to get him into a game with us last year. But he was there practicing with us every day for just about a month and into the playoffs there. And again, he was identified by our amateur staff, an undrafted player that we thought very highly of and wanted to bring. Essentially, he's in our prospect pool as well. So you mentioned the 6 first or second year guys. Really, it's 7 when you throw Landon into that group, and he's as much a part of that group as anybody. Was at development camp. He'll be on our prospects tournament roster, and into training camp here. So again, another young player that we're excited about having as part of our organization. And then rounding out the goaltending group is Hunter Jones. And we only saw a very small sample size of him last year, that one game in Milwaukee, but he gave us an opportunity to win that game. A tough overtime loss. I think it was 2-1. But, we feel we're in good hands with our goaltending depth throughout the organization. And if there's ever the need or opportunity for Hunter to join us in Iowa, we know he's a goaltender we can count on to help us win games. So really, we're just really happy about the off season we had. But ultimately, I guess the telling sign will be when we see the full product on the ice starting in September. So a little bit time left to enjoy in August here and the rest of the summer, but certainly an excitement for when we turn the calendar to September.
No surprise that Mike didn't miss on those two and shouldn't miss on those two. Landon Cozier, 60-some points as a defenseman in the Western League, coming out of Prince Albert. And Hunter Jones, you called it, that game in Milwaukee. I think he made 42 saves that night against a very good Milwaukee team that he gets the run support, he earns that win. So pieces that could be very important for the Iowa Wild this season at some given point. But Mike, it's always just such a pleasure to chat with you. Thanks so much for coming on again, and we'll look forward to doing it again down the line. But for now, take some time. Do you have any fun plans coming up ahead? I know it's tough with a newborn, but anything, even a small getaway or time to just relax and turn off the phone for a little bit?
Every day with her is a fun day, right? That should be my answer, right?
Your wife will be happy to hear that.
Yeah. Again, I'll show her a recording of this in 10 or 15 years and see how we feel about it, right? No, like we said, we got some family time planned, heading out east to visit with both sets of our families, and just really looking forward to that and sharing our new addition to the family with the rest of our family. So that's the excitement we have. So again, a little time left. It will go by fast, and can't wait till we get going.
Mike, very grateful for this as always. Thanks so much, and looking forward to our next chat.
You bet. Thanks, guys.
As always, a big thank you to Mike Murray, the general manager of the Iowa Wild, for a very extensive rundown of our roster. And now let's shift rosters.
Yep.
Another staff spotlight. For the second episode in a row, we had our videographer, Marquise Jones, last week. Sitting to my right this week is our graphic designer, Travis Green. Am I getting that right?
Yes, you are.
Didn't get anything wrong there? Name and or title?
We're good, yeah.
Well, Travis, it's great to have you with us here today. And as Joey and I talked about when this whole idea became an option for us, was there are a lot of staff members, Joey and myself included, that fans get to see. They get to hear from, obviously, on the podcast, ticket reps that people get to hear from, meet, talk to, but a lot, especially on the marketing side, yourself included, the brains behind so much of our operation and the creative brains behind so much of our operation, yet fans don't really get to meet you. So an opportunity to do that here with us on this podcast episode. So first and foremost, give fans a walkthrough of what does the game day, let's say, look like for Travis Green on a game day.
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks for having me. Game day is kind of special for me. It's kind of where things kind of slow down a little bit for me, and I get to kind of take everything and enjoy it. So
Is that the only person on the staff that gets to say that?
Oh yeah, if you saw
That's
what
awesome,
if you saw
yeah. I mean, you don't get to do that leading up to it.
Right. If you saw what the week looked like leading into game day, you would.
So I asked a terrible question.
No. That's a good question because everybody else is running around like a chicken with their head cut off on game day, and that's what Travis does basically during the week.
Yeah, the week leading in's like a blitzkrieg, but then we get to that Friday, Saturday, and everything slows down. I get to sit up in the press box, kind of enjoy everything. Sometimes I'm out handing out promo items, meeting with season ticket holders, fans, and that's the fun part, right? Like making those relationships. There's quite a few people that every game they come out and find me now for the ones who know me, and we get to talk and catch up and see how each other's weekends have been, or what have you been up to the last week or so. So that's always fun. But yeah, things kind of slow down. I get to take a little bit of a breather, enjoy the game a little bit, which is always great. There's nothing better than watching it up in the press box too. You get that like perfect view. So yeah, that's great. If I'm working on game days, helping out with like game day graphics or, any kind of last minute graphics, if a player gets a milestone, kind of making those graphics on the fly. So always being ready for stuff like that. But yeah, game days are kind of a little bit slower for me, it's a nice feeling.
So I'm 0 for 2 because I asked you what game day was like, and he just watches the game apparently. And 2, I said that fans never get to talk to him, and he goes and talks to fans during game days. I'm just going to shut up. Joey, you take it away. I'm swinging and missing here to start.
Oh, I like this. No, keep going. Keep swinging and missing. This is good. Let's talk about just your background. Really, I think that's one thing that I wanted to do with these spotlights is really kind of show fans like where everybody came from, how they got here. So. Before this, I mean, you're really entering your 3rd season now with the Wild. So before joining us, halfway through that 21-22 season, what were you doing and what's your kind of design career arc been like?
Sure. So I guess I'll start there, kind of where everything started. My career actually started in journalism. So broadcasting journalism, to be more specific. So I did the whole news route for a while, and
I'll just go.
Started there, and then switched to more print journalism. Kind of fell into cartooning and doing cartooning for a newspaper, and then that's really where I'm like, you know what? I've always loved art, always been kind of good at it, always loved to draw as a kid. And I'm like, why am I not doing what I love? So, kind of decided at that point to shift gears from journalism and go right into art. And back when I was going to school, graphic design wasn't a major that you could really take yet. So it was more studio art. So painting, sculpture, ceramics, kind of doing all those classes. So that's where I got my start, my degrees in fine arts. So learning all of that. And then about halfway through, you get to pick a concentration. So graphic design is where I ended up. Absolutely loved it and kind of continued with that. And then fresh out of school, got a job working for a book publisher designing children's books. So laying them out.
Awesome. That's really cool.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So, some like basic work, just like laying out the pages or picking all the photos out. Then as things kind of progressed, designing the covers and doing stuff like that. So that was a lot of fun. I got to work with like a lot of really talented artists who from all over the world, Italy, France, and I got to like take their original drawings and scan them in and color correct them. And so I felt like, I got to have a little fun doing that stuff. But after that, kind of moved on into web design, which I was looking for a challenge, wanted to try something new. And I ended up doing that for almost 7 years. So for about that long, I did e-commerce design, which is kind of a whole different beast in itself compared to just like regular website design because you're just really focused on sales and converting people to make sales. So after that, I was like, okay, what's the next challenge to my life? What can I do now that's going to kind of push me to that next level? And I've never been in the world of sports. I've always loved hockey. And I thought, okay, that's the next move, and the job came up and I'm like, I'm going for it. Like, this is the next move for me. And now it's been 3 seasons and it's been a wild ride, honestly, but I've loved like every minute of it. Like, you got to get that. Okay.
I had to.
I'm a dad, so you got to get that dad joke out there. It's just gonna happen. Yeah. It's just, it comes with the territory. So, it's been great. Not knowing a whole lot about sports design, kind of first starting out here, and then seeing where I've how much I've just grown in this short period of time has been awesome. But learning all about the sport too, because I'm not familiar with it like maybe you or Joey are, where you guys have grown up with it. It's like one of your first loves when it comes to sports. I've always been a baseball guy or a basketball guy, but I caught the hockey bug like almost right away.
It's hard not to when you're in it. When you're in it, it's very hard not to. If you were to look at, so obviously if anybody has seen any piece of creative or anything that comes out of our organization, there's, I would say, a 95, maybe now 90, because Jess helps out a lot on the social side, but there's a very high probability that it came off of your computer. Of all the things that you've produced, put together, created, what's the one Iowa Wild project that you would say is your favorite one that you've worked on?
Oh, man. There's been so many. There's like two that really stick out for me. The season ticket holder care package that we did last season, that was a lot of fun. I hear so many people talking about it, and they're like, "Oh, you made those?" And it's like, "Yeah, I did." And just hearing how appreciative season ticket holders were receiving those gifts, so that was really cool. But the one that kind of sits right here for me is the veterans jersey that we did last season. My dad being a 30-year military vet in the Army, that game was on his birthday. So getting to design that jersey, and not only design it, but give him one of those jerseys as well. Truly honored to do that for him. I can never say this enough. He's done so much for me, and he always tells me how proud he is of me, but I don't know if I've ever shown him how proud of him I am. So that was awesome to do for him, and it was kind of fun giving it to him too, because I gave it to him and he was blown away, and he's just looking at the front of it. He's like, "Oh, this is awesome." He's like, "You did this?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "How did you pull this off? How am I getting one of these?" I'm like, "Don't worry about it. We're good."
I know a guy.
Yeah, I know a guy who knows a guy. And then he flipped it over and saw that I had went through the trouble of getting it signed, and shout out to Alec for doing that for me, because he was the magic man behind all that. And that blew him away, telling him, that's so-and-so's signature and top prospect. You'll probably see them here up in Minnesota in a few years, and they're going to be big names. And he was just blown away by that. And he's like, "I got to have a hockey man cave now." So he's like, instant fan. So that was awesome. Really awesome thing to do. And I think I'll cherish that. It's probably one of the best things I've done here. So
cool.
It's a spectacular story. I don't know how you follow that up. I guess the only thing.
Good luck, Mr. 0 for 2. Good luck.
I don't even know where to go. The one question I had that I wanted to get to, because I know you're a music aficionado much like I am, there was another path you were sort of on at one point prior to jumping full bore into the creative, design, graphic design path, wasn't there? Tell us more about that.
So, yeah, I've been a music guy my entire life. Started out playing saxophone. Always wanted to play the drums. My dad and both of my uncles played the drums, so it's always something that was kind of natural to me, something that I always had interest in. And then kind of fell into that route as a teenager, just garage bands, hanging out in my friends' basements, we're playing music, and then we went that route for a while. So majority of my early teenage years and 20s playing in bands, trying to make it into the music world, going around playing shows and doing that. So that was kind of a big thing. It's still a big thing for me too. I still play for fun, but I've always loved music. Biggest passion in life besides, I would say, design and hockey is music. Those three things right there are just what keep me going. The seasons here can kind of be pretty grueling. I think we all know that.
Pretty grueling.
So music is how I recharge too. So we just had In This Moment and Motionless in White concert a few weeks ago, and I got to go to that and just rock out and have a good time. And it's a perfect way to recharge. You come back into work just ready to go at it again. So
you're speaking my language. The amount of music I listen to on the course of a game day is nuts.
Oh,
you
yeah.
should see him on a day-to-day. He's got his headphones in half the time, so you try to get his
So do
attention,
I.
and it's just zoned out. It's
Oh,
great.
Yeah.
And also, it's nice because then if you always have your headphones in, even if you just don't want someone to talk to you, then you can put your headphones in and you know what I'm saying? I'm sure you've had to have done this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They don't always listen to
Everybody
music.
has.
And I'm not actually listening to music. I can't. I'm going to be talking right now, so I'll just walk right by.
You say, oh, that's noise canceling.
Yeah, it's like the classic.
I gotta
like
go.
Like artists listen to their fine art, whatever they listen to, whatever gets them in there. That Zen mode is kind of what works. Do you have so we asked you a couple questions. You have any questions for us at all?
Oh,
Anything
flipping the script, huh?
about Ben's illustrious career?
Career in what?
I don't know.
No reference, just career?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's really broad.
Yeah, what do you want to know?
Well, if I had to ask a question, let's stick to music, and then we'll kind of shift gears from
I'll
there.
talk music all we're at the end of the podcast, so we got time now. Anybody who doesn't want to hear music, they can turn it off.
Good,
So we got
good.
time. Let's talk music. I'd love to talk music.
Current jam, what is it? What are you spinning right now?
I have become a major fan of the Grateful Dead in the last 4 months. I have a wife's cousin who I played golf with out in California on our Palm Springs trip.
Yep.
Who he had Grateful Dead just playing in the cart the whole time we played. And I'd always known the Grateful Dead. I'd always been kind of, I should say, deterred a little bit by like the whole Deadhead lifestyle that just doesn't fit me. But the music I have fallen in love with. Broke Down Palace right now I've listened a lot to. I love Peggy O. And what's the other big one? Lost Sailor. Those are my three big Grateful Dead songs I've been listening to right now. I don't know if that means anything to you, but that's been my new band of choice as of late. But a giant Gordon Lightfoot fan as well.
Okay. Yeah. I've never listened to them, honestly.
Yeah.
Obviously very familiar with them, and the huge following that they have, but never given them a shot, but maybe I should,
They're very unique. The music is extremely complex, but it's as someone who appreciates music like you do, I don't know if you'll get on the vibe. I think I don't know all of your music taste that well. I know you're really hard into the rock side, which I am as well. But I think if you like it, you will love it. If you don't like it, you won't like it.
Right.
I think it's probably the best way to. It's very polar.
Yeah.
You love them, or you're like, no, they're not for me. That's kind of my take on them so far, and
Okay.
I'm very much on the I really, really, really love them side. Yeah. So there's a good question. What about you, Joey?
I mean, I listen to music constantly throughout the day, especially as of late, as we're trying to figure out who our post-game concert's going to be, for this year.
Dead and Company. Boom.
Yeah, I've listened to a lot. I think right now the two kind of big kicks that I'm on be Noah Kahan and Zach Bryan. They're obviously Zach Bryan's on the country side. Noah Kahan's more on the alternative side, kind of
like folk rock.
Yeah, yeah. So,
folk
which
rock,
I like
things
low key, like Mumford and Sons is still in there.
Yeah,
Like, and I love
big
Mumford
fan
and
of
Sons.
Mumford
So
and
like,
Sons.
but those are kind of two that I've picked up on a lot lately. Not for the post game concert side. They're not coming here for a post game concert.
Sadly, no.
Darn.
No.
Nope. They're essentially superstars at this point, and they're not coming for our post game concert. But we got some cool things we're looking at. But yeah, I think those are probably the two that I'm biggest on right now. They're at the top of my playlist. So
Mumford & Sons Babel album I could listen to just on repeat.
yeah,
forever.
I'm
I
a
love
big
that album.
Yeah.
I remember I was trying to get tickets to see them at some point when they were out in the Bay Area, and it was so hard to get tickets. And then they came through. It was almost like, when you get like a winter jam or a summer jam kind of thing, where it's a radio station. They bring in all kinds. It was an alt rock station. So like 21 Pilots was like one of the headlines or whatever. But Mumford and Sons came and played like a 25-30 minute set, and I had to be there for it, and it was great. So that was a cool one.
Question for you, Travis. Do we think we could field an Iowa Wild garage band?
You know what?
I do play guitar. I can play guitar. I can sing. So I could take that role. Like I'm not going to probably go off on any extravagant solos, so I'm probably not your lead guitarist. But I can
Right.
do a little rhythm,
Yep.
and I can sing. So you can drum. Do we know of any other
Jess plays bass.
Does she really?
Okay.
Yeah, she does.
Okay.
I believe Joe also plays guitar and
Okay.
he sings. So
We got the makings.
yeah, you
we
might
got the
have
makings
the
of
makings
something
right there,
here,
like,
actually.
you know.
Bring in Sammy Walker, tickle the
That's true.
keys a little
Yep,
bit, right?
Yep. Okay.
if we need cowbell, he's got that covered too. So
Yep. Cowbell. I can play a triangle if we need it.
Okay. All right.
yeah, we have the makings.
Food for thought on that. Well, I don't have anything else.
No,
I wanted to get
that's it.
that was something I had thought about when I learned he played drums. I'm like, do we have the talent to put that together? Maybe we do.
I think so.
Might
we
have
do.
to. New summer project.
Yeah, because clearly we have so much time.
What was the show, MTV making the band, right? What if we just do an Iowa Wild making the band?
Let us
do our
know. Would
own-
you watch
yeah,
that?
would
I
you watch
probably
that?
wouldn't watch that.
Did you watch that?
Parting notes from us. Next coming episode, State Fair.
Yep.
Do we have those dates finalized yet? When you and I will be there, have we finalized that yet, or should
I
we,
believe
should we
so.
let people keep an eye on social media? We will put that out when we're going to be there. Joey's checking right now if we did indeed finalize that date, but we did it last year. We had a really good time. We encourage you, if you are planning on coming to the fair the day that we're coming out, which is
It's going to be on Monday the 14th. We're basically going to be there throughout the afternoon. I think our goal is to get there probably right around, if not just after lunchtime, and kind of hang out there at our vendor area in the Varied Industries building. And we're just going to hang out and shoot the breeze, talk about kind of what we did last year, is kind of catch people as they're coming by and get their thoughts on the season, answer any questions they may have about the Wild or really hockey in general. That's one thing we learned last year with our Man on the Street. A lot of people, just hockey knowledge is a big one. So, that's going to be our next episode. We'll record a pretty fun video. At least we think we got a pretty fun video coming for the State Fair. It's very under wraps. I think aside from you and me right now, nobody knows.
No one knows
what it is, and we're hoping to keep it that way for a while. But that should be one of the more entertaining videos I think we'll probably put out all year.
We're thrilled about it. Our brainstorming session, we both left, especially once we figured out we were going to be able to do what we had hoped
we had a lot of ideas, and then it was very quickly like, all right, like, yeah, this is cool. And then I think I texted you that night. I was like, we have to do this. The more I thought about it, like, so it's very, it screams Iowa State Fair.
And it involved getting clearance for.
Yeah.
Which
that's
the tidbit we can get.
Yeah,
we did have to get clearance for it.
Yep,
So that's all we'll say. But again, August 14th, Joey and I will be at the fair, and Wild people will be at the fair. I believe the entire time.
Yeah,
right?
starting the 10th until the 21st.
So don't just come to see us. Come to see. If you're not there the day we're there, come by, and there'll be giveaways, and there's merchandise for sale there as well. So
Trav will probably be there at some point.
I'll be there.
Come talk
you
music
can meet
with
the man.
Trav.
Yep, come talk some music.
Yep.
I didn't even ask you what's on. What are you listening to right now? I should turn that back on to finish.
A lot lately has been a band called Sleep Token. They're kind of different genres, between like metal, alt rock, deathcore. They kind of bridge it all. I'd say give it a listen. You'll either kind of like what you said with Grateful Dead. You'll either love it or feel like really indifferent about it.
There's no lukewarm Sleep Token fans.
No, I don't think so. But yeah, they're one of those bands that's kind of mysterious. They wear masks. You don't know who they are, so it kind of adds to that level of why I like them, because they could be Dave Grohl for all we know. Like, who knows? But check them out. They're really cool. So
okay, no free ads. We just gave one for Sleep Token here on this podcast.
I hope they enjoy it.
Hope they get some bump. They get a bump off that. Travis, this has been fun. Thanks so much for coming down and doing this. And let's get the wheels going on this Iowa Wild Garage Band.
Yeah, I got a list of band names in my phone. So I mean,
what's the best one?
Actually,
don't. No.
I don't know if I want to give that out.
You're right. That's a stupid question. 0 for 3.
Yeah,
0 for 3.
We'll do that when we turn
0 for 3.
Yeah.
0 for 3. Anything else, Joey Goldstein?
No. I think that's kind of it.
Want to talk about Boston again?
No. Nope. I guess no, but I don't know. Not talking about Boston.
Well,
the one thing we should mention is we did have some more recognition as an organization at the AHL Board of Governors meeting for the Western Conference. We won the Digital Media Excellence Award, which goes kind of, all three of us kind of have a hand in.
Everybody
from
here.
the creative side that Travis is putting on to the videos that Marquise, who is not here today. So if there's an editing issue, blame Ben. Marquise is not here today. Jess, you heavily on the AHL TV side. I think that was a big part of my understanding of why we were given this award. The AHL TV side and what we did from a digital marketing perspective were the two kind of big pieces that propelled us forward. So that's something we should at least mention that came our way. So another really exciting piece. But anything on the AHL TV side that obviously we took AHL TV to a whole new level this past season, but anything new and exciting that you guys are trying to add to the fold for that this year?
Well, before I get to that, got to mention Jordan Underwood, John Schaefer, and then both of the AJs, who are the AV people for Wells Fargo Arena. Those two specifically getting this thing off the ground, they were huge in it. It was a brainchild of mine, but in order to make it work, those two were the ones. I'm like, so I want to do this.
Yeah.
And they're like, so we're going to need to buy this.
Yep.
So those two were excellent, and then Jordan, our producer, who literally talk about juggling producers. That's what they do. They juggle a million things at once in different camera feeds. And when my mic's not working or John's mic wasn't working, he was just incredible behind the scenes in that. And then John Schaefer, who really I thought brought the broadcast together full circle with his pregame shows and intermission shows. And there were some nights where things weren't working properly, where I threw to John, and that guy is such a pro. Boy, did he do a wonderful job. And John's back for next season, so we're excited for that. And we're going to try to get him a little more involved, I think, is what our goal is, and maybe try to get him closer to the ice. That's all I'll say for now. We're still working out some details on it. But, you can't rest on your laurels, and we're extremely honored and humbled to have the broadcast have gone as well as it did in year one. But the goal in year two is to really amplify it and to bring our viewers that much more coverage and that much more exclusive coverage of our team and our players and our organization. Very, very grateful.
Awesome. That's it. That's all I had.
That's it. Okay. Well, a big thank you to Mike Murray, a big thank you to Explore Minnesota, as well as Executive Podcasting Solutions and Jeremy Core. We'll thank Marquise, even though he doesn't have a hand on this.
No, he did have a hand in this. He had to set up all the lights and everything for us. I mean, he had a hand in it. He's just not the one cutting it up on the back end.
There's one light back there.
I
turned it on.
Yeah, you explicitly said, make sure Marquise gets the lights set up that we need, and he sends me all the transitions I need to edit.
He did send us that. I know. I was trying to thank him. I know, but anyway, a big thank you to Marquise for normally doing such a great job and for making sure we could do our jobs this week. And, of course, Travis for stopping by. For Joey Goldstein, I'm Ben Gislason, and this has been episode 21 of Ridin' the Bus, the official Iowa Wild podcast presented by Explore Minnesota. And as always,
go Wild.
I was like, if he got this,
that would have been great. Yeah.
2 honks for the win.